All right, here we are. Good to have you all for our discussion on how to empower your metaverse activations. Really, I think to get us started, we'll just dive into some introductions. And so I think, well, we've got Mitchell Goldman from Volta XR. We've got Julien Paredes from Tropee, Paul David Oosthuizen from Made for Gamers, and Virgile Mangiavillano from VR Future. But I will let you maybe explain more what that is in terms of each of your activities, really kind of what you focus on. And that'll give us some context to have a chat about brands activating cool things in the metaverse and probably some other interesting topics. So I'll let you go. Maybe we'll start with Mitch first.
Sure. Great to see you all, and thanks for dialing in. I guess on my side, as Ethan called out, currently a co-founder at Volta, and what we set out to do around 5 years ago was ultimately becoming a platform for creating interactive experiences, specifically within music. We basically looked at a production studio and the guide rails, and it was very much kind of influenced by what was happening at the beginning of COVID, when the music industry, the live entertainment, the live event space collapsed. And we saw then a pivot from a number of the musical artists into these sort of big live-scale VR, XR performances, typically required multi-million dollar budgets from large-scale production studios, and we essentially productized that into a piece of software. So now powering hybridized experiences, which really means physical in-venue kind of experiences like concerts, festivals, and everything else, and then digitizing them by providing the visuals on the screens, and then streaming that whole experience out to any platform that accepts a stream key. So yes, been playing around with sort of hybridizing, bringing musical content into the metaverse and such.
Great, thanks, Mitch. Julien?
So hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am really pleased to be here today. Thank you for having me. So I am the head of partnerships at Tropee. And so yeah, in a nutshell, but yeah, we'll dive in later. But basically, Tropee is a SaaS, so a software as a service, a platform that is open to everyone and helps creators and brands to create contests, giveaways, and rewards that encourage people to take action that are linked to your business goals. And happy to dive into the topic later.
Excellent, thanks. And Paul David?
Thanks, Ethan. So Paul David, co-founder of Made for Gamers. We're creating a aggregation platform for tooling infrastructure providers, as well as service providers that are looking to provide value propositions to game developers or creators that are building games or metaverse experiences. That's it in a nutshell.
And Virgile?
Yes, hey everyone, my name is Virgile Mangiavillano. Actually, I have, let's say, two legs in that word. One being an actor. I'm having international production. I've been working with Ridley Scott on Netflix and acting for the Turkish and cinema television in Istanbul. But at the same time, I'm the co-founder of VR Future. So this is a startup that we created 2 years ago, following two roadmaps, basically in Web3 and VR virtual reality, aiming to bridge those two sectors by having a tokenized Web2 business. Further to one of the 3 sold out NFT collection that we created and sold out last year. We do have a production mission with a tokenized play to earn game based on our lore that we develop for our NFT holders. And we distribute also VR content. We are the exclusive distributor of Emisif with the virtual reality expedition in Turkey. And finally, having this educational mission, we try to onboard the Web3 space into VR and vice versa, the XR sector into Web3.
Excellent. Thank you, Virgile. My name is Ethan Pierce, so I get the pleasure of being your moderator for our little chat we're going to have here for 40 minutes. A couple different things. So Borderless Ventures is my investment activity into Web3, AI, and sustainable development, primarily through syndicated investments, grouping smaller investors together to make investments into startups. I also, because I do a lot of conference speaking and a lot of that kind of meeting ecosystems and all the people building stuff, I get the chance to do a lot of executive workshops and trainings for big brands like Dior, all the things at Kering Group, like Gucci and Alexander McQueen and those kind of cool things, but also stuff like Pierre Fabre, which is a big cosmetics and pharmaceutical company in France, and all the banks and that kind of fun stuff, which gets me really excited to talk about all the fun things brands can do with Web3 and this particular topic around the metaverse. Also one of the founders, co-founders of the NFT Factory in Paris, which is a 400 square meter physical art gallery for digital art, and is really the home of Web3, the Web3 ecosystem in France, co-founded by lots of wonderful people from things like Ledger and the Sandbox and Sorare and Ariani and a whole bunch of others. So if you happen to be wandering through Paris one of these days, feel free to come check us out. We're in the center by the big Museum Pompidou. So yeah, well, let's dive into this discussion. I think there's a lot of things we can talk about when it comes to what exactly an activation in the metaverse might look like for a brand, especially given your different profiles. Some of you are a little more on the video game side, some of you are more on the event side, some of you are more on the extended reality, or maybe to use Apple's new term, spatial computing, which we might get into, all of these kind of ideas. So I think there's plenty for us to go in different directions there with. Brands are doing, the obvious one is dropping into something like Roblox or the Sandbox and doing some kind of an experience or destination or an event there. We see a lot of mini games where people are, scanning QR codes on a physical product or something like that, and ending up getting dropped into some kind of a mini game that accomplishes something or earns something. Obviously, everything around AR and VR and extended reality is going to be one of the big areas where this is going to, I think, significantly develop, especially as we do get more of the technology in people's hands to actually experience on a more immersive level these environments. A lot of that, especially if we're talking about Web3 and the brand marketing side, is powered through NFTs. And so we might get into some of that on the brand marketing and community engagement side, or just, using QR codes or NFC or things like that as a way to tag the physical world into something going on digitally, whether that's in Instagram or Snap, or whether that's in something like Fortnite, or maybe we're in more traditional metaverse territory like Sandbox or something like that. So plenty there to work with in terms of possible ideas. But I think I'd like to start off by just having each of you maybe give your thoughts on how brands are leveraging everything around the metaverse from your perspective, since each of you is coming from kind of a distinct area. So if I won't necessarily target one of you first. If one of you would like to jump in and maybe give your ideas about how brands are kind of doing this right, or some interesting examples of where this might go.
Yeah, I can start maybe. I would say that many experts say that a real metaverse should have inside also a large use of blockchain, as NFT and crypto does, for, let's say, money transaction, authentication, certifying properties. It's already the case on mini metaverse. So the big idea is also how we're gonna tokenize that in the future. And I do believe, despite the bear market at the moment, that it is something for the future, specifically within the gaming sector, that it could definitely bring a lot of value. So yes, I do belong to those experts referring to the fact that that's going more Web3, and that Web3 would be, let's say, more kind of a symbol of a mother having below the metaverse and all those sectors, for my opinion.
I can
just
jump
add
in
to that
also.
as well.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
Sorry, Julien. Just in the nick of time, but I think just to add to Virgile's point as well, and good to see you again, by the way, Virgile. I think from my perspective as well, from what we've seen when brands are kind of wanted to join a Volta experience, more on the musical side, is it's become harder and harder for brands to communicate to their target, to the younger demographic, to what is the kind of the burgeoning class or generation, especially with things like mobile marketing being more and more challenging, given the whole debacle with fingerprinting technology. So we're sort of seeing quite often that, at least in the music sphere, where the metaverse is acting as a hook, an extension from a gaming environment, which generally has a younger generation. The brands are looking at it as a viable route to get in front of this audience and maintain cultural relevance. So we're seeing the same sort of thing with Coca-Cola, and they've sort of been sort of running through activations. And done a huge concerted effort when it comes to music to acquire the sort of Gen Z audience. I've been doing a sort of fractional consulting advisory work with sort of fashion brands as well, that are looking to place their products into games or XR environments. And again, it's very much around being culture relevant in a platform that is loved by that generation, and being more authentic way of actually maintaining cultural relevance. So that's what we see a lot.
Thanks, Mitch. Julien?
Yeah, with pleasure. So before I guess jumping in Metaverse, I always like to start, with a quick definition of, in my opinion, what is the Metaverse. So some say, okay, it's Web3, some say it's blockchain, whatever. From me, we have two words. I like to start with the basics. It comes from Greek. You have meta and you have verse. Meta is like beyond, and verse is like physical realm. So what you have when you link both of them, it's like a metaverse is something that is beyond the physical realm. When you have said that, you have said nothing at the end. But it's like, a digital realm for me. And I used to be a hardcore gamer. I used to get paid to play. I have a lot of friends who are esports world champion. And for me, people say, okay, Roblox is like a metaverse. Decentraland can be. So I don't know if it need to have NFTs, blockchain, or whatever inside it. For me, it's just a digital realm where people can interact, having culture, maybe enjoy, and things like that. In my experience, how brands are using the metaverse, I was lucky enough to co-organize or to work on the world first Metaverse Fashion Week some years ago in Decentraland and other places. And I've been lucky to work with Tommy Hilfiger and Tommy Hilfiger himself, the big boss of the brand. And at the time, there was a lot of hype, of course. So at the time, the brands were jumping into the metaverse a lot for PR, marketing. That's all at the end. They really didn't care at the time about revenue generation, and all this kind of stuff. Now, as Virgile said, also, it's a different paradigm, I would say. The hype has gone. Of course, there is a bear market. For me, it doesn't mean nothing. I am in the blockchain space since 2013. I have seen a lot of bulls, a lot of bear markets. So for me, just cycles. But what I see right now, I think it's also connected to how VCs also are seeing the business right now. I guess that brands are really cautious right now about what is their image and how they activate, let's say, a metaverse activation. So what I see right now is that, they are really focused also on revenue generation on top of PR. PR is not at all the core element of that, because as I say, the hype has gone, but now they're really focused on revenue generation. And in my opinion, that's why at some point, or one of the reasons, that we see more and more brands going to Roblox, Fortnite, and this kind of environments, because you have marketplaces and you have also revenue models and sharing revenue models that are here to help brands. And at the end, they need to pay the bills and they need to pay the salary of the people. So that's why, in my opinion, they are focusing on this kind of stuff. And of course, having a fun activation, etc. But the main part is, at least for me, the revenue.
Great. We'll come back to the definitions on the metaverse, because I do think that's always a fun subject as well, because I think it does give even more context and open up the opportunities by having everyone's definition kind of out there. Thank you, Julien, for all of that. Paul David?
I think the only thing that I would add is, I guess, the difference between activations in non-Web3 worlds or non-Web3 settings. So if you use like Roblox or Fortnite, for example, obviously huge captive existing user base. If you're going in there, it's very easy to go with a revenue-focused model. You're selling something or whatever the case may be. Whereas I think with a lot of the, let's call it the Web3 platforms that are not quite as mature yet, don't have those, tens of millions of active users. What I've seen brands do well is where they actually go with more of a value provision model. So where, they're actually giving something to the user. And I mean, that doesn't have to be an NFT, but just something of value It could be something as simple as Red Bull hosting or sponsoring an event. One of the companies that we've partnered with in the past is called Lemonade Social, and they hosted an event for Red Bull, and the participants in that event were able to get a POAP NFT, but then they could actually use that POAP NFT to get a Red Bull, at this particular event. So, and don't quote me, it might not be Red Bull. It's possibly another brand, but it was a drink. It was a beverage brand. So I can say that with certainty. But that's just an example, I think, of how you need to kind of look carefully at what the platform is that you're going to be activating in, and how receptive are those users necessarily going to be to the type of model that you're running. If it is a Web 2 platform, going in with a hardcore Web 3 play is probably not the right approach, even though you might be delivering some value. So yeah, I think it really depends on where you're going for your activation. But I think lots of people have done lots of things really well, and lots of people have done things less well.
I think that's a great point to highlight the differentiation between a video game environment where you have so many people actually already in that space that you're now dropping into to potentially market or create an offer for, versus trying to build community or destination inside of one of the more kind of typical idea of a metaverse platform, where user adoption is still in process, and so that's still a growing opportunity. So I think that's very very smart for a brand to be thinking about, okay, what do I actually want to create in terms of my value proposition, and then is that something that I want to build around a small community of people really passionate about the brand, or is it something I want to take more out to a larger mass market? I think that's really useful. But I'd love that Julien took us into the dangerous territory of what is the metaverse, because I always love getting people's opinions about what they actually think that is, because I think it's actually really relevant to, again, the same thing with what you just said about with brands needing to understand what their value proposition is in order to choose which platform or environment to target. Well, I think the same thing is true in terms of the metaverse is potentially many things. In fact, it's not the metaverse unless we're talking about more of a macro concept, because it's very much the metaverse is, because all these different platforms are, at least for now, all individual and not necessarily tied together. So I think that's really important for brands to understand that each of these environments or platforms or tools provides different positives and negatives. And so, because well, just from my perspective, I really think that the metaverse or the concept is that we are bridging our physical and digital worlds. Whether we're applying a filter on our Instagram photos because they're somehow that picture of the Eiffel Tower just isn't good enough, so we need to add something to it. So we're using filters, or things like adding in having our avatars in Messenger, so that now we have a digital or cartoony version of our perceived self to work with. All the social interactions in a game like Fortnite, where you're playing a video game, but it's also people's potentially it's a lot of their social interactions and friends but potentially in a purely digital experience. They don't necessarily know these people offline. I think as we move forward, and we talk maybe towards the end about as the technology improves, things like being able to walk down the street in Paris and be able to look up at a building and have little overlays show me which apartments are available, or things like that, or get my directions for Google Maps, or all those things. And so they might not all be pure metaverse concepts, but this idea for me of bridging that physical and digital really matters, because then that's what we're going to have when we do go into a thing like the Sandbox or Decentraland, where we're going to be in a purely digital environment, but it's going to incorporate all these things. What are your thoughts? What are your definitions, or what are your favorite parts, or the things that we should really focus on when we want to define the metaverse or metaverses?
Are you ready to talk all over the night until tomorrow morning?
Well, we've got 22 more minutes, so go at it, Virgile.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very hard to answer. And I mean, it was very interesting to hear Julien about, the digital realm, and because it's meta and it comes from the Greek. So we go back to the Greek. We can go back to Snow Crash with the novel. So in 1992. So we can also talk about the new iteration of the internet. We can talk also about Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, because as I was mentioning before, I do believe it is part of this, let's say, big decentralized movement. And I would also emphasize the word decentralization, because indeed, like we had the web, let's say, 1 from 91 to 2004, where we had like kind of static pages. It was the majority of users were consumers. And then we had like the Web 2 from 2004, having like the web as a platform with all the social medias, the forums, the wikis that we know. And then in 2014, let's remind that there was like this Web 3 world mentioned by the co-founder of Ethereum, Gavin Wood, and also by Polkadot, if I remember well. And yes, they were referring to a decentralized online ecosystem based on blockchain. So basically, it's also, I would say, a hope for the users, and having, let's say, a new world. We're mentioning that we're a little bit utopists. We are here all together, and we do believe, let's say, it's also a world where the human and the communities will have, let's say, more power and less oppressive moments by the giant tech companies, because it's also a fight. It's also a concept fight. We had recently a new terminology by I was listening to like every one of you listening to the speech for the launch of the Vision Pro, and the word virtual reality was mentioned once, I think, or maximum twice. Metaverse 0, extended reality, I think maybe once, augmented reality maybe once maximum, or even 0, and then it was all about spatial computing. So we have also another, let's say, tech neologism war all around that. So is it a buzzword? Is it a reality? I think we can discuss philosophically until the next day, as I said.
Yeah, you
Fantastic,
are pretty
Virgile.
right.
Thanks.
What I can add maybe on top of what I said before, I really enjoy also what you just mentioned, Virgile. I recommend also to everybody to read this book, Snow Crash from Neil Stephenson, because he's the first guy. I think for me it's like the metaverse father, or the metaverse, I don't know, grandpa. I don't know how to explain that, but it's the first person that quotes the word metaverse in the world at the end. But I really also enjoy what you just said, Ethan. Also regarding, I love, for me also, you have the internet and you have the metaverse as a big word. But I really enjoy also when you can merge physical and digital world. And I love to watch sci-fi. And for me, excuse me if I am wrong, but I think the movie called Ready Player One, I always compare, with the company Ready Player Me. They have made an insane move with the name, so always time for what is the real movie. But I really enjoy, even if the movie is not the greatest one of all times, we can agree on that. But the concepts are really interesting for me. Someone having his life in the physical realm, because we all drink, we all eat food, so we are physical human being. But interacting with digital realms, I guess it's the real question, and how we do that. We are used to interact with a desktop, a mouse, a keyboard, maybe with a headset, okay? But how interacting between, when you walk on the street, as you mentioned, Ethan. And for me, that's the one of the big subjects that I really like to dig. And I'm when I see company like Niantic, the company behind Pokemon Go, and things like that, and it was crazy for me when you have seen, I don't remember if it was at the COVID time or maybe a little bit earlier. I don't really remember the time frame. Sorry about that. But I think we all have seen in the news people jumping into the White House, in Washington, to collect Pokemon. It's fucking crazy. And why they did that? Because they had an incentive. They are really collector, and they did that in real life to interact digitally. And for me, that's the real interesting point when we speak about metaverse and merging worlds, if I can say that.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think I have a feeling some of those people might still be thinking about the fact they jumped onto the White House lawn because they might still be paying for that one. But it was curious to see how those things evolved, because during the pandemic, during confinements, Pokemon Go had to redesign a lot of the in-game stuff because you couldn't go outside and walk. And so it like removing the GPS from so you could walk around your apartment and still manage to get, to walk, even though you weren't actually moving on the GPS or stuff. So there were, it is interesting to see how those things work. And I always love the thing of Pokemon Go, because people don't realize that it still makes over $100 million a month, because they forget the economics of scale when it comes to, at €1, €5, €10 a person. It doesn't take a lot of people over the course of a month to get you to a very interesting revenue, even in a game like that some people might think is had its day or passe, but is definitely not the case in terms of the revenue it's able to still generate. Fantastic. Did we have any other, Mitch? I don't know if you wanted to chime in on your thoughts about what the metaverse is, or others.
More than happy to. It might be a bit reductive at this point, as I'm just sort of adding in kind of flavors on top. But I think, for me, I guess
it used to be a big fight. That's why I asked. It used to be much more aggressive. Like, no, you're wrong. That's not the metaverse. But it seems like we're all fairly in agreement. Sorry, Mitch. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think it's a topic that's sort of been battled out a little bit over the last couple of years. I mean, look, I'll always sort of default back to Matthew Ball's definitions of the metaverse as being sort of a student of him, which ultimately, I mean, just to surmise, is persistence, so that it doesn't stop, reset, or is terminated. The space is continual. Synchrony and live character. So the metaverse itself is a living experience that exists consistently and in real time. I think real time is a key word there. That sort of often in my mind gets missed off. A boundless number of simultaneous users and individual presence. So anyone and everyone can be part of the metaverse and participate in events together simultaneously and with individual agency. So fully functional economy. So individuals and companies where to work, own, sell, and invest in the metaverse. I think the fifth one is largely around what we're trying to do at Volta very poignantly. So an experience that spans digital and physical worlds. Interoperability is something actually I'll come on to in a sec, as the next point. So the ability to move data, digital objects, and content from one platform to the next. And then, of course, experience and content to provide a wide variety of sources. So from enterprises, loosely organized groups, individuals. I think for me, just always to throw a little bit of controversy into some of these panels, I think one issue that I personally always struggle with when looking at the definition of the metaverse is interoperability. I know that's a key sort of word that we'll all, as futurists, kind of pick up on. And I think that is the key blocker to some success. And while we're seeing some of the Metas of the world, or Apple Vision Pro, or some of those kind of persistent XR spaces, I think might have a good shot at unifying different metaverses, even though that statement shouldn't even be a real thing. I shouldn't be pluralizing the word. But ultimately, I think it's just a very challenging issue when it comes to incentive structures. How do you get one game studio to create a mechanism that incentivizes another game studio such that the digital assets or whatever it is are portable between the two? The same is, for my mind, stretched when you start looking at major enterprise clients like a retailer or a supermarket chain who now to suddenly integrate a load of Grand Theft Auto assets. So I just find interoperability a bit tenuous in terms of the ability for us to achieve it in a kind of really structured metaversal way. But that being said, there's been some big steps, like I said, with Apple Vision Pro and the essence of unifying it. Albeit it's quite interesting that hardware seems to be the point that's unifying some of these digital spaces.
I think there's a lot of great points there for us to bounce off on. I think definitely the hardware thing is curious, but when we do look at all of the value that was created, that we now experience through apps, whether it's on our phone, on a tablet, or the evolution of all of our SaaS applications that we use to run our lives because we have some software that does something for us on a website somewhere. Even the extent that like Chromebooks and things now, where you pretty much don't necessarily even install apps, you just run everything through the browser. It's interesting how those technology, how the hardware of it has encouraged the development of the real use cases behind it. I was even reading something yesterday randomly about Nintendo's growth before they launched the Nintendo Entertainment System, and how they spent 5 years basically, instead of doing what the other gaming companies were doing, focusing on more basic games. They really spent 5 years of R&D on making the console next generation, and then that way the games that came out when they came out with it were that much more, which enabled them to really capture a huge part of the market. So again, really, that the digital piece that came along was thanks to what the hardware could actually do. And so I think everybody keeps bringing up the Vision Pro. I think we'll come back to that one probably. I do think it's brought a lot of life back into the metaverse discussion, because it has people who have maybe written off the idea are maybe now kind of thinking, oh, well, then if we did have something which made all this much more accessible, then more people would maybe on board into it and get excited about it. And Apple has a track record, whether or not you want to call them innovators, whether or not you are an Apple fan or not, they tend to be the ones that manage to get people to do something with a device. And then Samsung and Xiaomi and whoever else, LG, can come along and create great versions of that as well. But it seems to me like that's probably going to be an interesting unlocking tool for a lot of the people like you who are all potentially building the content. But there was something that you mentioned there that I thought's important for our brand. If there are people listening from brands or wanting to think about how to potentially create a project for their company on the marketing or brand side, which is, do you guys feel there are certain brands or activities that fit the metaverse better, especially if we define the metaverse more as these immersive environments like Roblox or Sandbox, but also if we talk about the mini games or some of these other things, if we're talking about this digital experience on the immersive side, do you feel like that's really reserved to fashion and retail and music, or what are your thoughts about who can actually leverage this and get, as you mentioned, so many different good points there, Mitch, that they can bring value because of what the metaverse is supposed to be. Any thoughts on what brands or activities can leverage this?
Yeah, millions of thoughts. Who wants to start? I can maybe. Yeah, I mean, for my side, I do believe it's going to make a big boom through all the LB, location-based entertainment business. And I do believe it's something really concrete that will reach mass adoption very quickly, because at this moment in time, yes, it's not, of course, we mentioned the Vision Pro, and Steve Jobs did not invent the smartphone, did not invent the iPhone, but he did invent how to market and to succeed the marketing campaign to sell a product, as you mentioned, Ethan. So I do believe it's going to be like that with the Vision Pro, and they know how to market and to reach some big audiences. But I do also believe that those LB, those location-based entertainment spots where people go massively, we distribute VR expeditions, so we can definitely refer that to Metaverse. What is it about? You have like about between 500 and 1,000 persons a day that go physically to a spot, to a point, and they wear a headset, they wear HTC Focus 3 in our case. Then they work for 45 minutes within a digital environment, and it's at the same time a social experience, and that's very important for us, because I do believe it's also about emotion and social life, that digital realm, as Julien mentioned as well. So people are working all together in a group of 4, 5, 6, and they do share emotion where they are into virtual reality, and they walk basically for 45 minutes within a didactic, cultural, heritage experience. So I really do believe that those kind of activation, those kind of location-based entertainment spot, and you have like we like at the company we're working with, they launched for that tech for the first time last year in Paris, and now it's opening in Shanghai, in New York, in London. We are going to open in Istanbul next year. So it's opening all over the world, and I do believe that's a big step forward.
I can jump in also. As you mentioned, Ethan, I guess you are fully correct. Fashion brands are I like pioneer to jump into the metaverse, because even in their real business, if I can say, or their historical business, they are also pioneer in terms of what materials I am using to produce my next collections. It can be plastic, it can be what maybe also material that are living, also like plants or whatever. So in their philosophy, they are here to invent and to be pioneer. So they take more risks than corporate big brands, if I can say that. That's one thing. Also, for me, the gaming industry has more or less the same also value. There are also, gamers. They jump into a game, they roll their head and the keyboards, and they say, okay, here I turn left, here I turn right, here I click, here I keep this guy. So they know also how to interact and they love to learn. So for me, these two industries are really here to create. That said, for me, at least, even I always like, when I do consulting with brands or whatever, I always say to the guy I have in front of me, why are you going outside? You need a cultural moment. You need something to happen. Otherwise, we see, okay, on Decentraland, it can be a ghost town at some point because, yeah, you don't have any cultural moment. I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but the biggest congregation of humanity in the digital realm was in Fortnite for Travis Scott concerts, the biggest in the world. Why? Because, yeah, you connect game and culture, and here you can jump in. That's for me a massive element of digital experience, metaverse, gaming, or whatever. The second thing that I could say, I think it comes from also yesterday at the Metaverse Summit. Also, one of the co-founder of Exclusible, which is also a hardcore guy in the e-commerce space, said something really relevant for me at least. For now, these brands are using websites as e-commerce because websites for a brand is like top 4 of the revenue generation. If you compare the boutique in the Champs-Élysées or whatever, a website is always in the top 5, always. So it's like one of the massive boutique online. For me, they take less risk because it's working. They don't want to reinvent the wheel. But what I can see and what I believe in is that websites are quite obsolete for me. And having digital experience where you can interact, play, have fun, learn more about the brand, and buy. For me, it's something really it's futuristic and is the real thing that brands should go. I really enjoy what Imperia is doing, Imperia VR, and they are doing that, for example, with Lacoste, Occitane, and you go into a digital world, you experience, you have a game, you can win discounts, but at the end of the day, you can buy items from Lacoste, Occitane, or whatever. And for me, that's the real touch points. If you want a massive adoption, so fun, culture, and of course, generation revenue.
So we are almost actually at the end of our time together. So that went very quick. So I wanted to just really quickly go around to each of you. If you, so we kept bringing up the Apple Vision Pro. So that obviously seems to be a trend or something that seems to be exciting you, or at least creating lots of discussion. Do each of you have like a major trend or major idea that you think is going to be important to, especially in the context of brands leveraging the metaverse over the next 6 months to 2 years? Anything that comes to mind? We've got just a couple minutes left, so if each of you have a quick idea, that would be great.
I think just as a real quick fire there, the trend that I've sort of been seeing, and for what it's worth, just kind of stepped down as a full-time CEO of Volta earlier this year and stayed on the board, but been working around a number of different sort of music tech or entertainment startups in the last couple of months, is a big drive towards interactivity. And I've sort of seen that through entertainment, which is, Twitch did a great job of this pre-2020 with just the simple innovation of chat and having the ability for fans to communicate with artists of their choice, or streamers or gamers or whatever they want to talk to. And since we saw the kind of post-Twitch evolution, some of the platforms like the patrons and other sort of toolings out there, I've seen personally a huge movement towards anything really interactive. The ability for fans to have control, whatever medium that they're interested in or sector, from sports to gaming to music and fashion. It's a way for them to co-create and feel closer to the artist or the creator, let's say, in this world. So in the context of brands, it's something else I'm exploring quite deeply, both with visuals, with audio, with all the kind of different forms of entertainment. The kind of point around cultural relevance still really holds and authentic. As an earlier question, don't shove brands into a place that doesn't feel authentically correct. It's not telling the right story. But at the same time, we found ways now where if you identify a Red Bull can or a Coca-Cola can somewhere in a scene, the audio can respond to it. You can actually create something on the back of that such that it's an engaging ad or engaging kind of 3D asset as opposed to something just slapped in front of your face. So that's something I've seen a huge trend towards with visuals, with audio, with the whole way around giving users creative control. How much creative control is seemingly a big TBC, as it always is with creatives. But yeah, something I'm seeing permeating across a number of different platforms.
Thanks, Mitch. Paul David?
Going back to what Mitch said earlier about interoperability, I think interoperability and interconnectivity between virtual worlds, platforms, games, let's call it the user experience layer of the decentralized internet. So all of these different siloed platforms, that's what's going to make it easier for any type of brand to really enter the metaverse. I think right now it's very entertainment focused, obviously. I've got a very short definition that I like from somebody else. Ryan Gill from Open Meta refers to the metaverse being the internet built by game developers. And I think right now it is predominantly the internet built by game developers. But I think as things will progress, as interoperability makes it easier for different assets, different avatars, different platforms to be connected to each other, we're going to see huge amounts of new type of utility for brands that are looking to enter the space. Quick plug for Open Metaverse Alliance. I know they had a panel earlier yesterday as well, but I think anybody, Mitch yourself included, if you're interested in getting involved in that discussion, there's a few of these consortiums that are really trying to figure out how do we bring more interoperability to the space. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what kind of that means longer term for the metaverse.
Brilliant.
And I know Ryan well, but yeah, we'd love to take you off and offline.
Julien, Virgile?
Honestly, they have pretty nailed it, I would say, between Mitch and what Paul David said. I don't know if I have many.
I agree.
Honestly, no, I think they pretty much say everything, honestly.
Fantastic.
I would just add a human touch, like as mentioned before. It's also maybe a chance for us not to have, let's say, data collection and harvesting for the biggest profits of a few, but having, let's say, a more human world, and there is hope for everyone. So I do have this humanist vision and this utopia maybe, but I do believe in that, and hopefully it goes that direction.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for your time and for your contributions, for all your insight. And for those of you that are watching, make sure you follow all these rock stars on social media and keep up with all the good things that they're doing. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. I hope it was useful, and enjoy the rest of the Metaverse Summit.